Hi everyone, I'm Angela and welcome to Crafting with Angela. This is your new go-to place for all things paper crafting. Whether you've been crafting for a while now or are just starting out, you'll find a variety of tips, tutorials and inspiration here. Today we are making a shaker happy birthday card, and in order to make this card you will need a card base, some patterned paper, your die set that you're using, or if you don't have dies like this, you could use something like a plain square or plain rectangle that you could cut out and then stick the happy birthday on top of it. You are going to need some glue, some double-sided sticky tape. I am using pre-cut thin strips of raised foam tape, but that's completely up to you. I will also be using scissors or a trimmer to cut everything down. I use a acrylic block. I use that more as a weight. A bone folder, a pokey tool, some masking tape just to tape everything down, and some acetate. We are going to be using this happy birthday die set from Crafter's Companion, Gemini Crafter's Companion. And we're also going to be using some papers from this Honeysuckle Collection by Crafter's Companion as well. So this is double-sided paper pads. There's lots of different pictures of lovely honeysuckle flowers, and then the back side of it is a pattern. So I'm using this purple one, that's her favourite colour, so I've got nice purple card flowers on that. So what we're going to do, what I've done is, first of all, I have a card base here, and it's a square card. It is measures 5 3/4 square, so it's going into a 6-inch square envelope. And what I've done is I have cut 2 layers out of it. So the first layer, both from the same piece of card. The first one I have cut down to 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. That's going to sit nicely on the back and give us an edge. And then the next piece I have cut down to 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. And I did cut it deliberately. I went around and cut sort of 1/2 inch off each edge so that it ended up with flowers in as many of the corners as possible. And you can see that when this is finally finished, it's going to give us a really nice layer. I think something like that with the shaker element behind it. So with those pieces all cut, what we're going to do now is get down to the cutting, the die cutting. So I have a lovely that happy birthday die set, cuts really nicely out of the card. So I am going to put it on like this and leave enough of a gap, a bit of a gap between birthday and the word. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I just have some washi tape here that I am going to use to stick these down. It's quite old washi tape, so I hope it won't take any of the paper off it. So I'm just trying to make sure that's as straight as possible. There, and then I'm going to go in. I'm going to try and make sure that the birthday is down a bit, but also straight. Okay, so I'm going to just glue this on here and take a couple of pieces of washi tape and stick it on here so that we get a nice cut out of this. So let me bring in my die cutting machine. So there is my piece of front cardstock, okay, and I just put it upside down, and the reason I do that is I always prefer to die cut into the thinner sheet, if only for the reason that then means it's cheaper to replace the thinner cut. As you can see from the state of my boards, that's not cutting mats, that's not always the case. I don't always remember to do that, but I try to where possible. Okay, so that's the die cutting done. Okay, so here are the pieces. So I'm just going to take the washi tape off. just like to stick the washi tape down on the side of my desk in case I need to use it for a project anytime soon. Just check and see if there's anything that needs any bits that need taken out. So just using a pokey tool to go in there and get the bits out, and then we'll take the birthday one out. Okay. The only bit there is that wee tiny A piece. Oh, from experience, that tiny A piece is not easy to use. So when we're doing this, in order for the words to make sense, we need to keep the center pieces. So I'm moving the outside pieces, the larger pieces that actually spell out the words, putting them to one side, but I am keeping there's the centers of the P's, the center of the A. There's one center there for the happy birthday, so we're just going to go down here and pop out as many of these center pieces as we can. If you end up losing one or two of them, normally it doesn't make too much of an issue, but just have them sitting there so I have them when I need them. Now, in order to make a shaker card, so to make a shaker card, I've done that. I've cut a piece of acetate that's just slightly smaller all round than the piece of card. So this is 4 3/4 inch square, maybe taking 1/8 of an inch off it behind. And what I'm going to do now is stick this on. So you can use lots of different things. You can use glue, you can use tape, whatever's easiest. I am using medium matte. That's just because I think it dries, holds things quite well, but also if any of it falls out, it's not as noticeable as some of the other bits and pieces. So I'm just going around here. I like keeping the paper, if your acetate comes with a piece of paper over the back, I like keeping it on for as long as possible, because that then allows everything to dry properly. And I'm just going to go on with a acrylic mat just to press down on that and get it working properly. The ring is holding down there, and I'm going to go in now with the insides of the letters. So I'm just going to pick up the inside of the A here. Okay, I'm just using my finger to make sure the glue's all over it. Putting the A into roughly the right spot. You can use the acrylic block just to hold it down. Here we go with this. Move the acrylic block along. And last one. The last P here. just press down on that to make sure that that's going to glue. And the last thing I have is the tiny bits over here that we can put in for the spots over here. So in order to make this easy, I'm just going to squeeze a bit of the multimedia matte onto my acrylic block. Acrylic block on top there to hold it in place. Just going to throw these letters off and move the dies out of the way because that's it done. Now in order to raise this up in the back, I am using, first things first, I'm going to take the paper off. We don't need that anymore, and I'm going to use these pre-trimmed pieces because they're already cut and they're a good thickness. So I'm just going to go like this and go around the edge like this. Okay, so I'm just going like this. I'm going to need to put a dab of glue in that bottom corner there because that seems to be lifting up, which we don't want. There we go. I'll just put that back down there so that we're getting as much of this down as possible. I have really dirty scissors here. I use them for when I need to cut tape, anything sticky, because I don't like the idea of dirtying up a new pair of scissors. So these are just cheap everyday scissors that I use specifically for this. And when you're putting the foam in here, you need to make sure that you're not leaving any gaps anywhere, because any gaps you leave is what's going to cause your filling to fall out. So all I'm doing here is going in and filling in the gaps. Now the other thing I want to do is fill in between, put a line in between the happy and the birthday. Because in my experience, if you don't do this and you just rely on it to all the sequins and fillers, shaker pieces that you put in end up falling all the way to the bottom, and it ends up not being a very interesting shaker card. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just to make sure everything moves freely, I am going to take all this, take the backing off this and put a second layer And when I'm putting double layers of tape on like this, what I try to do is where there is a gap, I try to make sure that I am putting it, the next level on in a different way, almost like bricks in in a brick building, because what you want is that you don't want the piece, and you don't want any pieces to have weakness. So for example, the last time I did this, I started at that side. This time I'm going to start at this side, and it just means when we put this in and along, we've got the full piece there. Tiny piece in there. Just make sure everything's relatively nice and straight. Okay. That's 2 layers the whole way around. Okay, just checking you can't see any of it from the front, which you can't. And what you could do if you wanted to was you could if you wanted to go down in between the individual letters and things like that, I don't think it's needed. You could, if this was a wider, or the die cut wasn't taking up as much space, you could go in between these bits and pieces here and try and make it that way. So okay, so that's that. I do have the piece of card here that's going to be my piece of backing, so it's going to, when we take the tape off, going to go like that over the top. And the best way I find to be able to get this through accurately is to put, if possible, the shaker pieces onto the bottom and then pull it off. Tape here, so this is just double-sided tape that I'm just using along here. This is what's going to hold it down onto the card base when we get that far. But I'm going to put it now because you can get real good pressure on it now at this point, whereas if you wait until you have the shaker top on it, it won't let you do that. Just because it's the card base, I'm just going to put a couple in here to be on this side. Okay. So there we go. So that's the base that's going onto the top of the card. We want it to sit that way with the happy birthday up on that corner, because I think that's the part the pattern fits nicest with. Okay, so we're going to do that. What I'm going to do now is bring in the shaker pieces, and I'm going to keep this one to the side so I can see roughly where I need to put it. So when I find when I'm doing shaker elements, I like to start, let's turn this the other way. I like to start with the biggest pieces first and then move to the smallest pieces. So keeping this in place. Before I put the shaker pieces on, let's get through the difficult bit. Let's take the backing off of the tape that's on here. And that's just because if we don't do that, you can be sure as anything when you go to do this the other way, something hits something and it ends up making an absolute mess. So I'm just pulling the backing tape off everything here. Thing to remember when you're doing this is that nobody sees this side, so it doesn't matter if this side looks a bit messy or a bit awkward. This is the side that nobody's really going to be paying attention to. It's all on the other side. Okay, almost done. Just going around testing everything, making sure all the backing tape's off. Okay, so I'll put this the way we want it to be sitting there, and that's the way we want this piece to be sitting. Okay, so like I said, when I go to put shaker piece in, I start with the biggest pieces. So here we have some various pieces of confetti. So I'm going to start with some multicolored stars. Okay, there and there. And some iridescent sequins. Always put iridescent sequins in my shakers. Just think they're one of those things that just adds something to it without being too in your face. Okay, and I think that's enough for the sequins. Then I'm going to look at beads, and I think for this I'm going to stick with the purple colour. We're going to add a couple of these deep purple ones here, not the rough band. Okay. And when you do this, you are wanting to make sure you're putting enough in that you're giving good weight to your shaker, but you don't want to overfill it to the extent that you're not able to use it or see it or anything like that. So there we go. That's the beads in. And then the last thing I have here, the part that always causes the most problem, is wee tiny, very, very tiny seed beads. So I'm just going to use this stopper and just, these are the ones I always think that make it sound like it rains when you pour it in, but they're also the ones that go absolutely everywhere. Doesn't matter where you try your best to do this, they run everywhere. Okay, and then trying to make sure that you're going evenly in between. We're just going to go like this and press down. What that should do, making sure we press down on it. There you go. That has covered every aspect of that, and nothing's falling out. And all we need to do then is stick this on the front of this card. So again, turning this over, you'll see we have all of the tape. And this is a trick I have. Get the pokey tool down, and for the outside pieces you're wanting to just lift up and fold out a piece. lift up, so you're not taking it all off, you're just lifting up enough that you're taking off a piece. And then you do need to take off the 2 center pieces. Okay, so we're just going to take them off. Okay. Then with that in mind, lift it up, make sure everything's facing the right way, make sure your 4 tabs are out, and then what you want to do is try and get this so that it lines up relatively straight with the card, and then just press down, and then you can just pull the remainder of the tape away, and there we go. That is a finished happy birthday shaker card with a nice edge. You can hear it shaking. It doesn't leak. And there we go. That is everything we have. One of the things I like to do to finish the card off on the inside, and also the envelope if you have one, is put a strip of the paper or something along it. So these are the offcuts that I had when I was cutting down the trim on the outside. And we have a couple of different ones there, but there's one here that fits really well. So it can either fit across the bottom or down the side, and really which way you put it just depends on how you want to finish off. I think this one I want to finish off along the side there. And in order to do that, all I'm going to do is put some tape along here. We're just running some, running some double-sided tape, which apparently I'm not able to run straight. So just to put some double-sided tape on the back of this piece, and if you look here you will see that some of these pieces are just straight end on these, and that's because of the way it's been cut off the tape. So I think that's the straight end. So all I'm going to do is, same as we did before, just peel the backing off. Because it's just decorating the centre of the inside of the card, it doesn't matter, there won't be anything else to see. So if it's not perfect or it's slightly wonky, to me that just adds to the value of a homemade card. So I'm going to stick that down there approximately and just run that along like that. Make sure it fits, and then just turn it over and trim that off. And there we go. There we have our happy birthday shaker card. And that shakes nicely. You've got some constantly up and happy as well as down in the birthday. Okay. Hope you've enjoyed making this card with me.